Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. So enough of you responded from the last video saying that yes, you are interested in having a discussion about why Korean people are so obsessed with Molka or hidden camera crimes, or why is it so prevalent? The way that I wanted to frame it, especially with the N-room case, that's what you wanted me to go into. And I think we should go into it in the frame of why. And I think that is the hardest question to answer. We can go over all of the specifics of what happened and what the punishment was, and if that was enough, or if the system is designed to deal with that, or if they reformed it. But all of those things that you could, find online as well, and we'll talk about it briefly, don't really get to the core issue of why, though. If there weren't so many people demanding or using this stuff, it wouldn't be a problem. So why? And that is essentially that ugly mirror that you have to put in front of your face as a society and answer. Very difficult to do and very tough to swallow, but that's why we're here. We're gonna go through the mud. Now, you'll hear from a lot of YouTubers who talk about whether you should come to Korea, either to travel or live, and especially if you are a girl, to watch out, especially if you go into like the public lavatories, to watch out for hidden cameras, because apparently they are everywhere recording for some sort of sick kind of market in that stuff. And I was always kind of confused, like, why though? Because I mean, how much can you like really see? And there is a lot of toilet paper involved in a bathroom stall. I mean, do you really want to see all of that toilet paper going on? And I was just like, this makes absolutely no sense. Like, why would there be such a demand for this? Isn't that why we have bathroom stall doors? So we don't have to see all of that, The only reason why I think maybe there should ever be a demonstration or wanting to see is figuring out the proper way to use toilet paper, because apparently during the whole cerveza virus and there was a run on toilet paper, especially in America, how people were hoarding toilet paper. Apparently Americans use the most amount of toilet paper because there's an inefficient way that they use it. Apparently they're called bunchers, and I don't even know what bunching is, but apparently it may refer to basically grabbing toilet paper and using it in a way that is very wasteful, that like the surface ratio, whatever the ratio is, it's not optimal and you're wasting a lot of toilet paper. Other than that, I don't see what the appeal is for like trying to catch people like using toilet paper, although that's probably not the main part that they edit towards. However, when you really think about this, it's not only disgusting, but I think there is some sort of rationale, aside from the fact that some people just like this kind of gross stuff. So why do Korean people seem so obsessed with hidden cameras? Well, number one, first of all, skin flicks are illegal in Korea, so you do have a restriction of supply. So that, in a nutshell, I think does lead people, to this storefront, if you want to just call it that maybe at that point in the filtration of your consumer base, you're getting lots of guys because there's not a lot of supply out there that is legal, and so they're going into naturally the underground market. There are a lot of guys, especially like we were talking about the disaffected males, the men who are in those misogynistic community groups online. They are under constant belittlement and shame themselves. They carry a lot of shame around. And for some people, instead of going to therapy, what they feel relief from is to transfer that shame to another person. And how much shame would come through that video to see somebody like that, that a real person that you have ordered to do such degrading acts is like huge on the shame spectrum. And so that gives, what I believe, an opportunity for somebody with like so much shame to just transfer it on to that person in that video. And so that's why I think it's such a powerful mechanism for them to be drawn to. And so that's why I think 260,000 people in South Korea who have that level of psychopathic shame, yeah, I believe it. I've seen it all around. There'd probably be like 1,260,000 people, probably 10 million. Don't get me started. Now, there's also a strange kind of peeping culture, I think, in Korea. Like maybe it got passed down through, like, you know, when you had the traditional Hanok houses where our doors were made out of hanji, or the Korean paper, and you would poke holes into it and you just kind of like see and spy. And in a very like authoritarian culture where you have a lot of blockages to access to what's going on or information, like I guess that was kind of like a way to, I don't know, see what was going on behind closed doors. Even though you could probably hear, because literally the walls are paper thin. But, and just a side note, I think I've done that before, but there is something fun about like poking holes in there. Not to be a peeping Tom, but just poke. It's like popping bubble wrap. But that's horrible. You're not supposed to do that, because then you have to like redo the door again. But I think there is something about like this kind of sickness about peeping. And also peeping is one of the traits and attributes of, you know, if you're on the scale of narcissism, narcissistic personality disorder, sociopathy, psychopathy, that's like kind of the range. And peeping, you know, taking pictures or videos of people without their knowledge is one of the classic symptoms of that kind of mental disorder, because there's some sort of like kind of like power, I guess, you get over like surveillance, or like, you know, you're filming them. But so that peeping thing, I guess, is sort of like one of those things. Also, getting caught and punished in an authoritarian society, I think that also has something to do with it, because there is so much shame attached to that, and it's such a common weapon that's used against people. And so to see somebody else in that situation, in such a vulnerable, caught and shamed, like kind of trapped animal thing, you'd think most people would be like, oh, that's horrible, like would feel bad. But for this segment of the population, they actually would feel more relief. And I think this is the common misconception about the psychopathic traits. A lot of the joy, I believe, that perhaps they get is more wrapped up in a relief mechanism first than the joy, because apparently they don't really have a lot of emotions, or any emotions, but they do feel shame. Psychopaths actually don't feel shame, but if you're like, you know, levels below psychopathy, the most intense feeling that you can ever feel is shame, actually. And so this is how they run their lives, a shame-based system. And you know, Korea has mastered, just on a social basis, shame-based rewards and punishments. And so this is going on all the time. So people are being shamed. So you are creating a market essentially of broken people who have a lot of shame on their minds. And then so when you get the extreme ones in this group who have no other place to be able to relieve their shame, you get a big market for this type of end room or doctor's room or whatever telegram room that is then preying on people and making them do absurd things. Now, one of the prosecutors who actually blew the lid and started the whole Me Too movement in Korea says that actually the end room case was not surprising because essentially a technological evolution of a segment of the population that has migrated to these new digital platforms. We have had cases, apparently a streaming platform called SoraNet, and I thought that was kind of like a place for like, you know the whole like when people were illegally downloading like MP3s and movies and stuff like that. I thought it was that, but I think this is a different thing that they were basically that was like Skinflix or something. And then Ilbe, which is the misogynistic web community, she said basically it's kind of like that kind of group just migrating to these new platforms, and each time that they were doing all these digital crimes against women mainly, they either had no punishment or very light punishments. So the ball just kept rolling, and as the technology kept evolving, they just moved on to now what we are talking about in this time period with the Nth Room case and its partner case, the Doctor's Room case, is a period of about 2017 to 2020 that we're focusing on, where this content was delivered through Telegram. And Telegram is that kind of secret messaging platform sort of designed for being under the radar. And the way that it was marketed, like the way that I heard of it first, was for like journalists or for people who were in situations where you are under some sort of like authoritarian government and you don't want to get unlawfully targeted and have your communications seized. And so like the messages would disappear, or it's just harder to track down. But apparently on the other side, on the flip side, criminal networks could also use Telegram for purposes just like this. So in the last video I said there were like 260,000 users. Now some people say like there could have been multiple accounts, so that there's some estimates saying that the actual number of users could be as low as 60,000, but you know, if anybody knows like how many people share one Netflix password, like I would still keep to the 260,000, because it does seem that 260,000 in my estimates were about like 1 to 2% of the male population. That seems to me pretty accurate in terms of any population. You will have at least about 1 to 2% of psychopaths. So people engaging in this type of behavior, I would say, fall on the psychopathic, the spectrum. And so I think that's a pretty accurate read. And so I don't think that it's totally overblown to say that about 250,000 people in Korea would probably be actively engaged in this type of activity. And especially, this is just a group of chat rooms that they were able to catch. This wasn't like a corporation. It wasn't sort of like one big retail center that had the whole of the market in this digital sex crime, and then they took it down. It's essentially like a bunch of independent operators, sort of like, you know, a bunch of different like Avon ladies, and like they were just able to like kind of grab this group that was doing the most in this particular network. But you don't know how many others are, you know, all operating separately. There's no rules, there's no regulations. It's not just like one platform. It's not like you go into like, one like Amazon store to go for it. It's really nebulous. And so this is the way that this operation was able to slip through for so long. Apparently, when it first was reported to the police didn't even believe them, and they just, were like, eh. And then apparently even it just got so much more gross and gross and gross and gross that some of the users themselves, who, actually would be getting in trouble, reported it so that they would be cracked down. But apparently it was very difficult to try to get to them, and eventually they were able to. So what exactly is this nth room case, doctor's room case? So it's basically like a copycat. The way that they organized their scam was to create chat rooms and then number them. So with the nth room was essentially like, you're like, if you're introductory, everything is free. This is kind of like the milder content, it's like chat room 1. And if you want to get into chat room 2, you'd either have to like do some weird missions, like send in your own like nasty content, or pay in crypto, and then you can go to like room number 2, 3, 4, 5, and the operators would basically sort of lie, and they would say like, to entice people to pay more money and to go into the more exclusive rooms. They would say like, oh, celebrities are in here, but I don't think they had really many celebrities. Most of these victims that they actively made do things were underaged girls, even girls who were like elementary school students. And so the structure of it was basically in a Telegram chat room, you would be able to view pictures and videos. And those pictures and videos were mainly made, I believe, by the operators, but also other people inside the group themselves also put stuff up in there, I believe. The way that the prosecutors were saying, like, this is not a skin flick kind of scandal. This is a scandal of people abusing others. Yeah, because there's no production studio. There's no like distribution. This is not any kind of professional operation. It is literally like a criminal activity that is being filmed. Okay, so you probably want to know to what extent was filmed. Mainly about degrading body parts, and like you could like basically like using things like utensils, like wounding. And then the most disgusting thing that I thought I heard was like even like having bugs crawl around. So this is where I think it is a little bit flippant and careless to say that, oh, this is just a deviant preference. Because when you look at this kind of psychopathic behavior, the deviant preference part is sort of the last item on the list. If we're looking at it from a psychological perspective, is that the main thing I think here is not necessarily the skin part, it's the shame part. Shame, because the biggest thing here that they are, I think, trafficking in is abuse and shame. Yeah, the other things go along with it if that's what gets you off, but I think what you're seeing here is extreme amounts of shame. And why would that appeal to somebody? Because the language that they specifically used for the victims that they lured was that they would become their slaves and they would have to do whatever they were told. So it's less, I believe, about the skin thing and more about the power, the control, and then the giving another person shame. Why? Because if you are on this psychopathic spectrum and you can't succeed as a psychopath in real life, they're what you're called like an inverted narcissist or an inverted psychopath. You still have those desires, but you can't do it. And so in this forum, they can play God. And a lot of times people are always miscategorized narcissists saying like, oh, but they're so confident. No, they are so not confident that they have to put up that front of confidence. But there are some people who don't even do that. And in this type of case, they are able to get power, they're able to get that pride, and they're able to get that control that they're wishing because they want to be a god themselves. One of the people who was taken down for the Nth Room case, the guy that did start the Nth Room series of chat rooms, his username was God. And he thought he was untouchable, and he thought that he would never get caught. He thought he was a god. So there's hubris here, and they're trying to create their own little universe where they are the god. And then one of the reporters said when they interviewed some of the users or some of the administrators, they said like, this is not an ordinary just kind of distribution of illicit digital content. This is actually like real people. Like this, like how do you feel about that? And they said like that was the appeal, that they knew that this person was kind of real and alive. Now that was the key phrase that they were using, that they were alive, like, so it wasn't like some old like vintage skin flick or something, like that they were alive and suffering. And so this again starts to tell me that it might be more than just, about skin. It is more about the actual shame and suffering and the power and the control that people are witnessing and having that be the main driver. And until we understand that that's the main driver, not just some deviant perversion, then I don't think we can effectively figure out how to fight against it. Because if we always think like, oh, that's just like, maybe just like some deviants and just kind of like try to figure out how to, lock them up, and maybe it's like not a normal thing because normal people aren't that deviant. No, but more normal people face a lot of traumatic shame that they cannot relieve. And if you push traumatic shame in almost every aspect of somebody's day, you are going to produce a consumer base that will always actively seek extreme measures to get rid of their shame. And this type of stuff will pop up. Okay, so how did they lure some of these young girls into this? They used some really tricky, very manipulative tactics. One, they would create online games, and so like little kids, like even like elementary school, middle school kids, high school kids would play these games, and then the operators would say, you won a gift certificate, but if you want that gift certificate, send us some personal information so that we can like mail it to you or verify. So basically they were able to get personal information that then became the seeds for blackmail. So then if they were able to get them to do something that was inappropriate, then they could say like, well, we already know where you live, we know who your parents are, we're gonna send this to them, so that they basically got trapped in blackmail. Or there was some other people who did some sort of thing where, like I said in the last video, like sent malware to get their social networks. Then there were people saying like they were trying to recruit like part-time jobbers or models and say like, oh, well, to do like, see like your audition, like, send us these types of photographs. And then One of the operators even pretended he was a police officer investigating these types of crimes and hacked into people's computers. I mean, they did everything and probably more, because that's all I was able to find. And they were able to, again, like I said, like, I didn't believe the number. They said it was about like 100 people that they were actively turning into slaves, but I bet the number is far higher, especially because, like I said, these are the only the rooms that they were able to find with these people as the operators. And this was like 2 main operators and their associates, which were about 3 to 5 other guys who went to jail. Now, the guy that you see as the main perpetrator, he was the one that did the copycat one, the doctor's room chat groups, and that was Cho Chu-bin. And when you saw him, he had like egg in his hair, and he didn't even apologize. All he said was like, "Thank you for stopping me from continuing to live like a demon." Yeah, total psychopath. So he got 45 years in jail, and the other guy who started the nth room got 34 years in jail. But this was kind of odd, because usually you see these types of people get only like 3 years in jail. And so there was a revision to the laws to make it much tougher after this case, because it just horrified Korea. But still, so the criminal law has been revised where the age of consent standard for rape of minors is from 13 to 16. Yeah, people keep, forgetting the fact that age was only 13, and now it's only still 16. Think about that. And then before the law was revised, if you were a consumer, you were more protected. You were only under this punishment if you distributed, sold, leased, or provided this illegal content. And then the punishment would only be up to 3 years in prison or a fine of up to 30 million won. And the judge could, give you less. And 30 million won is less than $30,000. Then they revised it so that if you have it, buy it, store it, or watch it, you are also subject to the same fine, but it's still kind of light. So how much money did they make? You're probably also wondering about that. So I don't believe this, because these guys apparently were just full of lies all the time, and it's hard to trace. But the guy that's called himself God said that, he only did it for the pleasure. And so he said that he only got about like $900 in gift certificates. And he said that he did that on purpose because he thought that he would never be able to get caught if he never accepted cash, and if it was only gift certificates or whatnot. And he was the one that gave it back. He said he gave it back to the users. But now that we know the scam about like tricking young kids into playing online games and then sending them gift certificates, that's probably where it went. And then the other dude, the guy who did the doctor's room, he said apparently he made about 180 million won, about like $170,000, but who knows? This is the weird thing about this thing, is that like it operated on such a big scale. What company can get 260,000 customers? That's huge. But this was just like a bunch of like rando dudes, and we don't even know if they're really just like the front men, and then there's actually like other people in the back that are the real operators that are like sitting pretty right now, or whether it was just them. But in any event, like, this is not a centralized operation, and it was using chat rooms. And so they would like open chat rooms, and then they like operate for a while, and then they close it, and then they like make you go to a new chat room, open it for a while, and close it. So that's why it was like hard to try to follow and trace. And that's what gave them a false sense of security, though, thinking that they could never get caught. And the guy that was like in charge of like the feeder blog, so how do you find this to begin with? How do you find these chat rooms? Well, apparently this guy named Watchman, who was a 38-year-old just guy who worked at a company, he set up a blog, and that was how he introduced people who wanted this kind of content. And then they forwarded those like filtered customers to a chat room, and then the initial chat rooms were like kind of like, you know, try before you buy or freer, you know, like, and then like you have to like level up. And apparently they deputized people, so this is why it gets complicated, is like how many people are involved in this. We don't even really know. Apparently they said that they found that in a second nth room case, there was a 12-year-old boy in elementary school who was like the mastermind running things. I mean, who knows if he was just a front man or if he actually was doing this kind of thing. I don't know. Then maybe that sparked that whole juvenile justice drama on Netflix, or like, you know, provided some of the actual real life cases. If you want, leave your comments below, but I don't know if we want to well, do what you need to do. But of course, make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye, guys.
Tune in next time. Don't forget to subscribe. Find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Love you.